What if the quiet new girl at school wasn't as alone as she looked? What if the person everyone thought was an easy target turned out to have a protector no one in their right mind would mess with? That's what happened the week Maya Turner walked into Ridgeview High for the very first time. The morning air was cool, with just enough bite to make her pull her hoodie tighter. The yellow school bus rumbled away behind her, leaving her at the edge of the parking lot. She stood for a moment, looking up at the wide brick building and the tall glass doors that reflected the bright Texas sun. Her brown skin caught the morning light, her box braids tucked into the hood of her sweatshirt, framing a face that was calm but alert. Students streamed in, backpacks slung over one shoulder, talking, laughing, not even noticing her, which was fine. Being invisible was the plan. Maya wasn't new to this routine. She had learnt the steps the hard way. 4 different schools in 3 years meant you figured out where you fit, or you stayed out of the way. For her, the second option was safer. She shifted the straps on her backpack and started walking toward the entrance. Inside, the hallways smelled faintly of pencil shavings and floor cleaner. Lockers clanged, sneakers squeaked against the tile, and somewhere down the hall a teacher's voice called for students to hurry to class. That's when she saw him, Bryce Kendall. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the navy and gold Letterman jacket that marked him as one of the school's football stars. He stood in the middle of a circle of guys, the kind who laughed a little too loud at his jokes and seemed to draw confidence from his approval. Maya didn't need anyone to explain who he was. She'd met his type before. The golden boy who knew the rules didn't apply to him. She kept her head down, walking past without so much as a glance. But it didn't matter. The sharp shoulder bump came out of nowhere, hard enough to knock her off balance. Her books slid from her arm and scattered across the floor. A few students slowed down, some with smirks already on their faces. "Well, look what we've got here," a voice drawled above her. She didn't have to look up to know it was him. Slowly, she crouched to gather her books, ignoring the heat crawling up her neck. She didn't answer, didn't meet his eyes, just picked up the last notebook and stood. "You're new," he said, like it was an accusation. Maya stepped past him without a word. "Hey, where's your manners?" His voice carried easily through the hallway, loud enough to pull even more attention their way. "I'm talking to you." She kept walking. Silence was her armour. But she'd barely gone 3 steps before she felt it. A firm tug on her backpack, just enough to stop her. Her jaw tightened, she turned, and when their eyes met, something flickered in his expression. Maybe surprise, maybe curiosity. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly. He grinned, tilting his head. "And why's that?" Maya didn't answer. She just stared at him for a beat longer than was comfortable, then turned away and walked on. If Bryce Kendall thought she was just another new girl he could push around, he was about to learn how wrong he was. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Maya moved through her classes like a shadow, sitting near the back, answering only when a teacher called her name, and avoiding the clusters of friends who already had their places in the school's social map. By lunchtime, she had learned the obvious. Bryce Kendall owned the cafeteria just as much as he owned the hallways. He sat dead centre at the biggest table, surrounded by teammates, the cheer squad, and anyone else hoping to stay on his good side. His voice carried above the low hum of conversation, every laugh at his table a little too eager. Maya picked an empty spot near the far wall where she could see without being seen. She focused on her food, ignoring the glances she caught from across the room. If Bryce was curious, let him be. She had no intention of feeding whatever game he liked to play. The day ended under a soft haze of heat that made the pavement shimmer outside. Maya walked toward the bus stop, her phone in hand, her mind already halfway home. That's when she heard it. "Hey, new girl." She turned. Bryce was there, hands in his pockets, strolling toward her with that easy grin people mistook for charm. 2 of his friends hung back near the parking lot, watching. "You've got an attitude problem, you know that?" he said. Maya didn't respond. She just looked at him, steady. "What's the deal?" he asked, taking a step closer. "You think you're better than me?" A short laugh slipped out before she could stop it. Not nervous, just amused, and from the way his grin wavered, she could tell it threw him off. "I think," she said slowly, "you should walk away." His grin came back, but tighter this time. "And why's that?" Maya leaned in just enough for her voice to drop. "Because you have no idea who I am. Bryce tilted his head like he was trying to read her. "All right then, who are you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled her phone from her hoodie pocket and tapped the screen once. The deep, throaty rumble of an engine broke the quiet. Heads turned as a sleek, black muscle car rolled up to the curb, sunlight glinting off the polished hood. The tinted driver's window eased down, revealing a man with calm eyes and a steady gaze. He didn't need to speak to make an impression. The stillness in his posture, the way his hands rested loose but ready on the wheel, and the faint white scar across one knuckle said enough. Bryce's grin froze. The easy confidence in his shoulders shifted into something sharper, more cautious. Maya stepped past him and opened the passenger door. "Still think I'm just some random girl?" she asked over her shoulder. He didn't answer. By the time the car pulled away, the air felt different. Whatever Bryce had thought about her this morning, he wouldn't make that mistake again. By the next morning, Ridgeview High felt different. Maya could tell the moment she stepped through the front doors. Whispers travelled faster than the morning bell, threading through clusters of students like a current she could almost see. She caught fragments as she walked to her locker. That black car looked like a movie scene. Did you see the guy driving? It didn't take a genius to know they were talking about yesterday. Maya kept her face neutral, spinning the lock on her combination like nothing was out of the ordinary. She wasn't here to bask in the attention, but she wasn't going to hide from it either. Across the hall, Bryce leaned against the lockers with his usual crew. But something in his stance had shifted. Not much, just enough that his grin looked more forced than usual. His eyes found hers, and for a few seconds neither of them looked away. Then she closed her locker, slung her backpack over her shoulder, and walked right past him without a word. At lunch, the air was thick with expectation. She could feel people waiting, watching to see if something would happen. Bryce sat in his usual spot, his voice louder than necessary, probably trying to convince everyone, maybe himself, that nothing had changed. Maya grabbed her tray and headed toward her quiet corner, but halfway there, one of Bryce's friends stuck a foot out. It was casual enough to play off as an accident, but placed perfectly to trip her. Her tray wobbled, a carton of milk sliding dangerously close to the edge, but she caught herself before she fell. A couple of students snickered. She straightened, eyes on the guy who'd done it. Ryan, stocky, always wearing that same smug grin. "No comeback, princess?" he asked. Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile. Didn't realise cavemen still roamed the earth. A ripple of ooh rolled through the nearby tables. Ryan's grin faltered. Even Bryce's expression shifted, just a fraction. Maya kept walking, sat down, and started eating like nothing had happened. She didn't need to win every moment. She just needed to make it clear she wasn't playing by their rules. Still, she knew Bryce wasn't the type to let things go. If yesterday had bruised his ego, today had probably cracked it. And when people like him felt control slipping through their fingers, they got reckless. She could feel it coming, and she was ready. By the time the final bell rang, Maya knew something was brewing. She could feel it in the way Bryce had been watching her all day, not with the usual smugness, but with that calculating look predators get when they're trying to figure out their next move. She took her time packing up, letting the hallway thin out before heading to her locker. Sure enough, she didn't even need to open it to know something was wrong. The door was covered in marker scribbles, insults, crude drawings, and a few things she was pretty sure would land someone in detention if a teacher saw them. Her books were on the floor, some pages bent and torn. A small crowd had gathered a few lockers down, pretending not to watch but clearly waiting for a reaction. Maya crouched, picking up her things one by one. No rush, no shaking hands, no muttered curses. She stacked the books neatly, closed the locker without glancing at the damage, and walked away. Across the hall, Bryce was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching her like he was waiting for her to explode. When she gave him nothing, not a glare, not a word, his jaw tightened. That night she sat at the kitchen table while Logan Hayes leaned against the counter, nursing a mug of coffee. He'd been watching her since she walked in, probably reading more in her expression than she wanted to admit. "They trashed my locker," she said finally. Logan raised an eyebrow. "That's their big move." "For now," she said, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. He set the mug down and walked over, pulling out the chair across from her. "So what's your move?" Maya leaned back, letting the question hang in the air for a moment. Then she smiled, slow, deliberate. Let him dig his own grave. Logan's lips curved into a grin. That's my girl. Maya didn't bother explaining further. She knew how guys like Bryce worked. They thrived on reactions, on proving they could get under your skin. The less you gave them, the more desperate they became. And desperation made people sloppy. It wasn't about avoiding the fight, it was about choosing the battlefield. The next morning, the whispers were louder. Not about the car this time, but about the locker. Some kids thought it was funny, others thought it was pathetic. Either way, the story had spread, and Maya could feel the shift. High school loyalty was fragile. Once people started questioning the king, the crown never sat quite the same. Bryce was at his usual spot by the lockers when she walked in, surrounded by the same circle of athletes and hangers-on. His conversation faltered for just a second when he saw her. He waited for her to glance his way, maybe to show even a flicker of irritation about yesterday. But she didn't. She walked past without pausing, eyes ahead, like he didn't exist. By lunch, the tension had built into something heavy. The cafeteria felt quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Maya carried her tray past Bryce's table without looking at him, but he wasn't about to let her slip away so easily. "Hey, Turner," he called out, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Still crying about your little locker?" A few chuckles rose from his table. Maya didn't slow down. She set her tray on her usual table and sat down. Bryce leaned back in his chair, voice carrying even farther. "Guess your big tough dad isn't here to fight your battles today, huh?" That one got more laughs. Maya finally looked up, her expression calm. "Funny," she said evenly. "You keep bringing up my dad like you weren't the one who almost tripped over yourself when you saw him." The cafeteria went still. Even the clatter of trays seemed to pause. Bryce's jaw tightened. His friend shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. She took a slow bite of her sandwich, never breaking eye contact. Bryce stared back, but for the first time she could see it, the flicker of doubt, the tiny crack in his armour. Because the truth was, bullies like Bryce didn't know what to do when the person they were targeting refused to play along. And the longer she held her ground, the more that control he clung to began to slip. Maya wasn't in a hurry. She had all the time in the world. The last bell rang, and students spilled into the parking lot in a rush for freedom. Maya didn't rush. She knew Bryce was still simmering from lunch, and if he was going to make a move, it would be now. Away from the eyes of teachers, but close enough to an audience if things got loud. She was halfway to the bus stop when she spotted him. Bryce stood by his car, arms crossed, no friends around this time. Just him, watching her. Maya slowed her steps, not out of fear, but to make it clear she wasn't going to be pulled into his timing. She stopped a few feet away. "Let me guess," she said, her voice steady. "Another speech about how I don't belong here?" Bryce shook his head. "Nah, I just want to know one thing." She tilted her head. "What's that?" He studied her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing like he was trying to see past the calm. "Why don't you fight back?" The question didn't have the bite she expected. There was no smirk, no sneer, just curiosity, almost frustration. Maya let the silence stretch before she answered. "Because I don't need to." He scoffed. "That's not how it works. People like me push. People like you either push back or get run over." She stepped a little closer, lowering her voice. "Or maybe people like me wait. We let people like you keep pushing, keep showing everyone who you really are, until you're standing in the middle of a mess you made yourself. And then, we don't have to lift a finger. You've already done the work for us." For just a moment his expression shifted. Not anger, not confidence, but something else. Doubt. "You think you've got me figured out," he said, forcing a half smile. "Maybe not everything," she said, her tone calm. "But I know what scares you." He stiffened. "I'm not scared of you." Maya shook her head. "Not of me. Of being irrelevant. Of losing the only thing that makes people pay attention to you. Of waking up one day and realizing nobody cares unless you're making someone else feel small." His jaw clenched, his shoulders tightening. She could see the war happening behind his eyes. The urge to lash out, fighting against the knowledge that if he did, he'd prove her right. "I don't need to fight you, Bryce," she finished. "You're already fighting yourself." She stepped around him and kept walking, leaving him standing by his car, silent. That night, the kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and toasted bread. Maya sat at the table, idly tracing the grain in the wood with her fingertip, while Logan rinsed a mug at the sink. He'd been quiet since she came home, but Maya could tell he was watching, the way his eyes flicked her way every now and then, reading her without needing to ask. Finally, she broke the silence. "He cornered me after school today." Logan dried his hands on a towel, leaning against the counter. "Bryce?" She nodded. "Wanted to know why I don't fight back. And I told him I don't need to, that he's already doing enough damage to himself." A slow smile touched Logan's face, but his eyes stayed serious. "And how'd he take that?" Maya shrugged. "Didn't have much to say, just stood there trying to figure out if I was bluffing." She paused, then added, "But I don't think he's done." Logan walked over and pulled out the chair across from her. He didn't sit right away, just rested his hands on the back of it. "You want to be done? Maya frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "You could end this now," he said. "Call him out in front of everyone. Embarrass him bad enough that he won't try again. You've got more power than you think, kid." She leaned back in her chair, thinking. The idea had weight to it. There was a temptation in ending the game in one clean strike. But then she shook her head. "No, I want him to end it himself." Logan chuckled, finally sitting. "Patience, that's not something most people your age have." Maya smiled faintly. "You taught me that. You said real strength is knowing when not to swing." His expression softened. "Yeah, but I also said to know when the moment comes. And it will." She nodded, the words settling into her like a quiet promise. Because she could feel it, Bryce was teetering, trying to claw back control. And the more desperate he became, the closer he got to the edge. All she had to do was wait for the right moment to let him fall. By midweek, the shift in the air at Ridgeview High was impossible to ignore. Bryce still held his usual spot at the centre of his group, but the laughter around him wasn't as quick, the smiles not as certain. People had started remembering the little things, the time he cut in line and no one dared say a word, the way he talked down to people when teachers weren't listening. Those moments didn't fade anymore. They lingered. Maya noticed. She didn't gloat, didn't even let it show on her face. She just moved through the day like nothing was happening, knowing that the silence around Bryce was louder than anything she could have said. That Thursday at lunch, Bryce made his move. She'd barely sat down when his voice cut through the cafeteria. "Turner," he called out, "still hiding in the corner? Or are you just scared to sit at a real table?" A few heads turned. The challenge hung in the air, daring her to play along. Maya looked up, met his eyes, and in the calmest tone possible said, "I'm exactly where I want to be." It should have ended there, but Bryce wasn't done. He stood, hands resting on the back of his chair. "You think you're better than everybody because you've got some big-shot dad picking you up in a fancy car?" The room went quiet. Maya set down her sandwich and leaned back slightly. "I don't think I'm better than anyone," she said. "I just don't need to prove I'm worth something." That one landed. The silence that followed wasn't for her, it was for him. His friends looked uneasy. Even a couple of freshmen nearby stopped pretending to eat. Bryce's jaw tightened, but instead of snapping back, he smirked. "We'll see about that." And that was when Maya knew he was going to push too far. Because Bryce didn't understand the kind of damage a desperate person could do to themselves. And the best part, she wouldn't have to lift a finger. All she had to do was let him keep talking. It didn't take long for Bryce to make his mistake. By the next morning, Ridgeview High was buzzing. Not the usual hallway whispers. This was sharper, charged. Phones were out everywhere, screens lighting up with the same images and clips. Maya heard the fragments as she passed. "Did you see the group chat? He actually said that. Coach is going to lose it." She didn't have to ask what happened. By second period, everyone had seen it. Screenshots from a football team group chat and a short video from someone's phone. In them, Bryce's name sat above messages that cut deep. Trash talk about teammates he pretended to like, cruel comments about other students, mocking jokes about teachers, and things so ugly they couldn't be brushed off as just kidding. Nobody said exactly who sent it out, but most people figured it came from someone on the team, someone tired of covering for him. By mid-morning, a teacher had pulled Bryce out of class. Word spread fast. He'd been sent to the principal's office, and Coach had already benched him until further notice. When Maya saw him again in the hallway later, the swagger was gone. His friends weren't flanking him. Instead, they kept a few steps back, eyes down, like they didn't want to be caught in the fallout. Bryce spotted her by the lockers and stopped. His voice was low, tight. "You did this." Maya tilted her head. "Did I?" He searched her face, maybe looking for a tell, but she didn't give him one. She didn't need to. The truth was already out there, and the court of high school opinion had made its ruling. Once a king loses the crowd, the throne never feels the same again. The rest of the day played out like the slow collapse of a building everyone thought was solid. Word about Bryce's suspension from the football team spread faster than the lunch line. Teachers kept a closer eye on him in class, and his friends, the same ones who once hung on his every word, now kept their distance. Maya didn't gloat. She kept her pace steady, her routine the same. That was the point. She hadn't needed to lift a finger. By the end of the week, Bryce had been called into meetings with the principal, the athletic director, and his parents. He was officially benched for the rest of the season, and a short, mumbled apology went over the morning announcements. Not the kind that fixed a reputation, just the kind that confirmed it was over. That Friday afternoon, Maya stepped out into the sunlight and spotted the black muscle car at the curb. Logan Hayes leaned against the driver's side door, one arm resting on the roof, watching her with that half smile he reserved for moments when he didn't need to say, "I'm proud of you," out loud. She slid into the passenger seat and let the door click shut. "It's done," she said. Logan studied her for a beat, then started the engine. "You didn't even have to throw a punch." Maya smiled faintly. "Didn't need to." The rumble of the car filled the air as they pulled away from the school. The weight she'd carried since her first day at Ridgeview was gone, replaced by something lighter. Not triumph exactly, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd won by staying true to herself. Bryce had been his own undoing. She'd just given him the space to prove it. Maya didn't need to shout or fight back to win. She stayed patient, kept her composure, and let the truth reveal itself. Bryce lost, not because someone took him down, but because of his own actions. True strength isn't about reacting right away. It's about knowing when to stay silent, wait for the right moment, and let the wrong person expose who they really are. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. I truly appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you again in the next one, here on Rain Inside.